The Boksburg explosion has sparked conversations about truck drivers disregarding height restrictions on bridges. More than 30 lives were lost after the gas tanker hit a low bridge. And pictures of other trucks getting stuck under bridges have emerged since. So what's the reason for this? To speak about that and road safety, we're joined by the President of the Truckers Association of South Africa, Mary Phadi. Mary, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Good evening.
So, a quick cursory search on Google offered me a number of articles about similar incidents. 2 incidents at the Muizenberg Railway Bridge dating back to 2017 and 2018. And interestingly enough, the 2018 article referenced that electronic safety measures had been put in place since 2016, and despite that, they still had on average 2 incidents per month at that site alone. We recently saw another image that garnered a lot of commentary on social media of a vehicle carrier transporting luxury vehicles getting stuck under a bridge in Cape Town. Of course, there's also a photo doing the rounds of a city-to-city bus getting stuck under the Greyville Racecourse Bridge in Durban. And of course, still very fresh in our memories is this Boksburg fuel tanker explosion. So we have to ask, is it a driver problem? Is it a signposting problem? Is it a route planning problem? Is it a bridge problem? Where do we start?
Let's start by saying condolences to the families that will have to bury their loved ones. It is indeed a treasure to the trucking industry. Look, we have a situation here, and this is teaching us as the industry that we need to continue doing this campaign. It is a clear indication that when they are leaving the yard with the load, it means we don't do the same measurement. And when you get to the bridge where it says 4.7 height, then there's a possibility of the product to get stuck or a vehicle to get stuck. It is a process that we need to start with and think about it and do it correctly. When you learn something, you must do it over and over again. It has been going on for some time in South Africa, where you find the abnormal loads being stuck under the bridge. It has happened before. But this one came with consequences, and we need to speed up the process of dealing with the issue as the operators in this industry.
So what I'm hearing you say is that you think it's more an issue of driver education than anything else?
There's quite a lot to that.
Okay.
Remember that the driver might not have quite enough knowledge as to how much load is he carrying at the back. On the other hand, who's loading that? Where are you going to offload it? Which route must you take? So those are the questions that we need to ask ourselves to say, why don't you all get involved and make sure that this thing does not come back again? Despite educating the driver, we need as operators to educate ourselves so that we can be able to divert those vehicles if need be, instead of them traveling inside town or something like that. So
after the Boksburg explosion, the transport company released a lengthy statement in which they supported their driver. They said he got to the bridge, saw there was no signposting, so he stopped. He got out. He assessed the situation. He made calculations and he decided that it was safe. However, a miscalculation of the incline on the other side of the bridge is allegedly, according to them, what led to this tanker getting stuck. So we have to look at the problem, as you say, in its complexity. We can't follow the easy route and just blame the drivers immediately. They have a very difficult job. So how could the Transport Department, in conjunction with trucking companies, associations, with municipalities, make drivers' lives easier, protect the public by perhaps doing better infrastructure management? Is that a problem?
The good news is that in June last year, in 2022, the Minister of Transport had appointed a tax team where we did an implementation plan, 11-point plan. I think what we need to do is that in that discussion, it gives us an opportunity to be able to put all those rules in place. There are things that we are discussing there, but this will, give us an opportunity to educate people more or engage as a committee to say, what is it that we are seeing outside? How can we fix it? So at the end of the day, operators are going to have information coming from the government and it's going to be easy for them to follow certain things, because the law enforcement is coming from local municipalities, and we might not be policing trucks at all times, but the message that will be coming from the government will be clear to say this thing cannot happen, and how can we resolve it. When there's an incident, it means that we need to resolve something as a matter of urgency.
Often these incidents highlight a problem. The problem is then put into focus in the media. A task team is established. As you said, it has been done last year. But sometimes we find implementation of those action plans becomes problematic. What else is the trucking industry itself doing to better regulate their drivers? Because it's not just the safety of the goods, the safety of the driver, it's the broader safety of the public that needs to be taken into consideration. And often in these incidents, whether it's a small incident or a large one, we see infrastructure damage as a result. So from internally within the association or the industry, what's being done?
Look, we've always been focusing with the policies that we have inside the company itself, and we did not look outside. But now we are discussing the issue of the public. And previously, if you look at the company policies, it is clear, it is stated, there are safety rules there, and there are routes that we must be able to follow. There's drive cam. That's why people are getting, to know about those accidents, because they come from the drive cam. And there's the monitoring of the speed. But now we need to look at outside. And how do you look at outside? You need to engage everyone. And that implementation plan process will assist us as the freight industry, including those stakeholders that we have agreed with, to say, how do we make everything better for the lives of the trucking industry? We need to stand up and say, government, in this implementation plan, what is it that we are doing? Because tomorrow we need to come and answer and say, what is it that we are doing? And one of the things that we have shown that there's an improvement is the issue of the safety awareness campaign. Drivers today were telling us in Limpopo with the MEC that, we know about these campaigns, and they're assisting us, and motorists are now patient with us. So I think for us to speed up the process is the responsibility of the stakeholders, including the unions, to push the government to be able to go to the right direction.
In amongst this whole discussion about safety and the height and low bridges, we also have to look at the broader context of an ongoing fight between the freight industry and government about the allowed height. There's a law that prohibits containers exceeding 4.3 meters from being driven on highways. With the standard flat deck trailer fleet used in the country, combined with those international standard high cube containers, that reaches 4.5. So you have a disconnect there with the freight industry saying, but this is a norm. In southern African countries, our neighbors, they use these containers. They're allowed to drive. Why are we not allowed to use those containers in South Africa? Especially if you consider that buses, double-decker buses, are 4.6 meters high. They're allowed to travel on the highways. But unfortunately, these recent incidences make us question whether we should in fact look at that argument and say, yes, those higher containers should be allowed. Because if we can't manage the lower ones, then there's a big problem.
Look, we said with the Deputy Minister of Transport, I think it was 3 years ago, I don't recall the specific date, and in that meeting specific, we're discussing the height of the containers. We need to stand up. We need to be approaching the Department of Transport. We need to be saying that, do you realize that whatever that was discussed in that specific meeting did not bear fruits, because today we are sitting with the same problem. If we can find our government officials standing up the way you'll see it from the outside as operators, when we see something, we engage with them. And when something is wrong, we want to act as if it is wrong, but we're supposed to fix it early than before it happens. We know that in Africa, it's accommodated. Why not in South Africa? And we cannot be living with the rules that has been there, previous years. The regulation that we have is 1988. The industry is not regulated. It passed on the 29th of September.
Standards have changed.
Standards have changed. Things are happening. and those bridges might have then been accommodating smaller products. But today, you know, the load that we are loading is totally different. Things are happening. So we need to be moving away from what has happened yesterday and start a new life, you know, and go on. You know, as life goes on, the technology changes, and we need to be in par with it.
Hopefully, technology will be one of the solutions. As you say, there's all kinds of driver monitoring, speed monitoring, electronic warning systems at low bridges that may in future help us. I want to take us back just one small step to this Boksburg fuel tanker explosion. 30 lives lost. Countless families have had their homes damaged. We've seen footage of windows completely shattered, roofs caved in. And there have been reports that these families have to date not been assisted. Now, putting blame completely aside, whether the driver was at fault or not, that's not the issue. Surely in South Africa, we're a country that comes together when tragedy strikes.
Definitely.
What responsibility do you think that the trucking industry at large has to, in some small way, assist these families to rebuild their lives? Because this happened completely out of the blue. They were not in a position placing themselves at risk. There should not have been a fuel tanker in that vicinity.
You know, this incident is just unfortunate. And I'm aware that if you are, you know, in this industry, there's a public liability insurance, but it cannot be able to accommodate those number of people that they have lost their life. I should think that road accident fund will play part here, and I'm not quite sure how long it will take, but the Department of Transport should come to the party and say these are the things that, hence regulation. You know, regulation could have made us to know exactly how to deal with this issue. Regulation could have suspended the company and assist them to say, what is it that we'll be doing for the families? How are they going to be accommodated going forward? What are the plans that we have beyond that? But at the moment, because everybody is in business, tomorrow they continue to be on the road, those are the things that are giving us problems. We need to deal with them as South Africans. We need to be saying that this is wrong. It is wrong to have those people, the families losing their loved ones. It is really wrong for the driver to go through what he went through. You know, it is painful. We should understand. We don't know what happened on that fateful day. But the bottom line is that if the regulations were correct, we're supposed to be sitting down that company and say, how much is your public liability? How are you going to accommodate these people? How is the department going to assist? And all those things. Otherwise, we're going to leave this thing hanging, and tomorrow we will be told that we are not taking care of our loved ones or the responsibility of the South Africans.
The trucking industry, aside from the issues we've already been discussing, has had many problems in the last few years. We're in a new year. It's 2023. I'm sure many South Africans are hoping that we're not going to see the kind of truck blockades on major routes that we saw last year, not only affecting our economy, but placing people's lives in danger. We saw a number of drivers lose their lives in that action. Where are we sitting at the moment with action relating specifically to foreign national drivers and the widespread unrest in the industry?
Yes, in that task team, it's one of the implementation plan. Point number 4, it talks about the traffic register. That traffic register must be reviewed because the Minister of Home Affairs, Minister Mtswaledi, had said it's not a scarce skill to hire a foreign truck driver. So therefore, you need to apply with the Department of Labour and Home Affairs. Whoever that is employing a foreign truck driver today, they must know that they are doing something that is very illegal. He openly has told us that, and you know, it was in the public domain where he said, go and read the document and make sure that you understand what is it that you are doing, it is wrong. So they tasked him responsibility, we had to sign a document that was saying that no trucks are allowed to cross the road. One of the things of those reasons is because there are people that needs to go to hospital. There are ambulances there. There are school kids that must go to school and all those things. So if you have a certain unrest, do it in such a way that it accommodates the public rather than putting your interests first.
Do you think, and coming back to this issue of height, because we discussed that law that prevents trucks over 4.3 from driving on the road. However, if I'm correct, trucks exceeding that height from neighboring countries are exempt from those rules. They're allowed to enter the country. Do you think that causes tension as well?
Definitely. I think the free trade is bringing that together. You know, that policy is talking to whatever that is happening in Africa. There's no need to have different laws, and those laws must come together. Here, I think the bridge is 4.7. So in that as well, as South Africans, when they cross border bringing anything to South Africa, we should know that this is the height of the bridge that we have, accommodating what they have outside the country. So those policies in place through the cross border, I should think that they are engaging and discussing that to say what solution can we have to be able to resolve that matter. Because at the end of the day, all products are coming within Africa, and trucks are coming within Africa. And in some incident, we had an accident of the truck coming from another country. How do we deal with those things? You know, those things must be sorted out. And the sooner we do the implementation of it, and the sooner we regulate the industry, everything will be easy, because paper will be talking to everybody down to their lowest level.
And we know the important role that freight plays and the trucking industry plays in South Africa's economy. Our rail system is practically non-existent at the moment, so transporting goods from one side of the country to the other is completely by road. Thank you very much for your insights this evening. We look forward to an incident-free 2023.
We need it. We need prayers.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anneli.
And that was Mary Phadi, President of the Truckers Association of South Africa. We'll be back with more news after this. Do stay with us here on Newsnight.